This video will demonstrate running logic import from within the Allegro PCB Editor. Logic import can be run in two basic modes. You can push the logic or the schematic into the board from the schematic side, or you can bring the schematic into the board from the PCB Editor side. In this demonstration, we'll focus on bringing the schematic into the board. The schematic I'll be using will be Allegro Design Entry HDL. Basically what is going to be shown here could be used whether you're using that schematic capture tool or OrCAD Capture or System Capture. So we're going to basically focus on bringing a schematic in an ECO mode and see what happens when certain changes have occurred. So first let's take a look at placement changes. I'm going to zoom in up here. You'll see U7 part right here. That's a 8-pin dip. If I go look at my schematic now, I've changed that to a PLCC type footprint. So there's a conflict here between the schematic and the design. So what's going to happen? So we'll do File, Import, Logic. If we look at the Place Change Components section, we have three options here. Always will say, no matter what happened between the old and new, always remove the old part. By the old part, that's the part in the design, currently in the design, and replace it with the new part that's in the schematic. Never says if the old part in the design is not the same as the new part coming in from the schematic, remove the old part from the board and put it in the placement buffer, and the user will have to place that later on. If same symbol says if the part in the design has the same footprint or package symbol as the part in the schematic, then it will put the new part into the design because the footprint is the same. So let's look at the first two scenarios. They're a little bit easier to look at. We'll concentrate on always first. So in this mode, since U7 in my schematic is a different part and a different footprint than the U7 in my board, it should rip up the old part and put down the new part. Now what it's going to do is it's going to take a look at this part, show element symbol, it's going to remember where it was placed at, 175, 35, 25. It's going to remember the rotation, 180, and remember which side of the board it is, not mirrored, so it's on the top side. So it's going to remember those attributes about this part, and then when we run logic import, it's going to apply those attributes to the new part. So let's do an import. And notice now U7, the new part, is here. If I look at the location where that part is placed, it's placed at 175, 35, 25. It's rotated 180 degrees, and it's on the top side of the board. And you can see now that it has DRCs everywhere, but that's okay. So let's look at this in the other mode. Let me reopen the design here. Zoom in back up here. And let's do another file import logic. This time let's turn on never. So it should rip up the old part but not place the new one because they're not the same part or the same footprint. Notice that U7 is now gone. If I go into place manually, U7 is sitting there in the placement buffer waiting for me to place it. So that's the ECO mode of placement changes or part changes. Let's take a look at the ECO mode in the routing mode. Let me reopen my design back to the original condition. Down here I have this BNC3 net connected up between the J3 and a inductor and a capacitor. If I go look at my schematic, I remove the connection off of J3. So there's a conflict here between the netlist, between my schematic and my board. Let me go through File, Import, Logic. Down the bottom section here, allow etch removal during ECO. That's going to be, says what happens with the routing that's in conflict. So with this toggled on, which we'll do first, it should rip up any etch from the current design that's not supported by the netlist. Remember, I removed J3 connection out of this order here. And we look, and now that routing has been ripped up because that was not supported by the netlist. Let me reopen the design. We'll zoom back down here, and we'll run it again with it set the other way. File, import logic. I am not going to allow etch removal during ECO, so it should leave the etch there, and I will probably end up with DRCs because the connections are not supported by the netlist. And sure enough, I have DRCs on both sides because J3 is not supposed to be connected up to either one of these parts. This concludes demonstration on running logic import from within the Allegro PCB editor.